All right, hello again. My name is Sean Nelson. I am the Director of Operations for the Independent Carrier Safety Association, otherwise known as ICSA. We are so glad that you've joined us for our Safe Winter Driving webinar. Uh, we know that in parts of the country where they're not even expecting it, there's a lot of winter weather going on out there. We're stationed in Phoenix, so we don't see a whole lot of that, but we know that a lot of the country is dealing with that. One of the strengths at ICSA is our board of directors. We are so happy that we have folks with a wide variety of experience and knowledge in trucking and truck safety. And we're very grateful that we've got two of our board members here today to talk about safe winter driving. I'll first introduce Scott Montgomery. Over his very vast experience in his career, he worked with the Wyoming State Commercial Vehicle Enforcement, including running it for a while. That included covering all the ports of entry. He also worked a lot with small carriers, helping them understand regulations and requirements of trucking. He brings a vast array of knowledge and experience to our board and to us here today for the webinar. We also have with us Mike Hitchcock, who recently, I guess not so recently, it's been a long time now, he retired as the senior safety advisor here at ICSA. He kind of started our safety program, but his career in trucking has included everything from working in the shop to working behind the wheel. He went into Knight Transportation, served there in their safety department for what, 23 years, Mike? And worked his way right up to the top. To let you know just how influential he was at Knight Transportation, the very most important, the biggest award that they give to safety professionals is called the Hitchcock. So we are super fortunate that he joined us at ICSA. We're grateful he's still on our board and helping us out, and we're grateful that he's here with us to talk about safe winter driving. Without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to these two gentlemen who know way more than I do and let them teach us about driving in winter weather conditions.
Thank you, Sean. Appreciate all the flowers. Not sure that they're all true, but you can pay for that later. Just a quick outline of what our presentation is going to cover today. We'll talk about safety trips, route planning, chaining, snowplow safety, proper winter weather gear, and when to avoid the roads. Let's start off with the video. I don't know how that driver missed that pickup, but the pickup had pretty good traction because he almost passed him on the right there before the video ended. In that video, following distance, the driver obviously his following distance could have been better, but in wintertime, especially in slippery conditions, we need to be looking 3 to 5 times farther down the road and not even be anywhere near other vehicles. Also, lane changes on an icy road is something that usually ends up in a jackknife. So this was a very fortunate situation for both drivers. So following distance, the three most important ways to stay safe in winter weather are following distance and speed. And then of course, pre-planning and being prepared for bad weather. Your following distance should be 12 to 15 seconds, even more if it's icy. Increase your following distance more at night. Slow down considerably when there's snow or ice or poor visibility. And you have to change your mental preparedness in wintertime. You can't have the same mentality that you do the rest of the time of the year. You can't be in a rush. You need to know, plan ahead, be prepared, make sure that you've got safety equipment in the truck for personal safety and vehicle safety. But also, you've got to have your mindset right for winter driving. Next slide. There's another great example of speed too fast for conditions. And An interesting fact, you might think that that was a rookie driver that ran off the road there. The majority of winter weather accidents are drivers with 18 months to 3 years of commercial driving experience. That's just enough to get them overconfident. They've made it through one winter without getting in a crash, and then all of a sudden they have a crash. This specific video was an example of a driver that was just going 1 or 2 miles an hour faster than was safe for conditions. And everybody's driving skills are different. But speed for conditions, just because you were able to drive at 55 in the snow last year doesn't mean you can drive at 56 this year. The only way to find out what proper speed for conditions is to be comfortable being under what the maximum speed for conditions is. Yeah, getting there in the nick of time is not something you want to worry about in winter time. Getting there safely is the most important thing. Next slide. Route planning. You should always review your route very clearly, as well as side by side. I always looked at the weather along with my route planning, and made a plan of attack in case weather got bad enough that I needed to stop. That can be a big help. Also avoid high risk areas such as steep mountain passes with snow, with poor snow removal. This time of year, or this year especially, we're getting snow in parts of the country where there is no, they don't have snow removal equipment. You don't want to be parked on the top of a hill or get stuck on the top of a hill when there's no one able to get up to help you. Also, mountain passes aren't a place that you want to be at dawn or dusk. You want to be up there when the roads are either dry or frozen hard. Dawn and dusk, when the road is transitioning, that's the most slipperiest time to be out there. Be sure you perform a thorough pre-trip inspection before driving. It's a whole lot better to do your pre-trip in a comfortable situation at your leisure than it is when something breaks down in your middle of a snowstorm. Review the weather information along your route. Most of us drive regular routes. If you're on an irregular route, someplace that you're not familiar with, you might want to pair up with a driver that's a line hauler that's runs that route all the time and run over with him. He'll be more experienced with the dangers of that specific road. And then know the specific rules for the state you're traveling in, including the chain laws. That's very important. You can find some of the chain laws and chaining requirements on the FMCSA website. You can also find them on the ICSA website in the Master Safety Training Manual. For slower speeds, factor in extra time. Don't ever be in a rush. Be prepared for possible road closures or unexpected stops due to weather or accidents. If there's an accident on the road, maintain a lane of traffic. Make sure you don't block all the lanes, because you need to leave room for the snowplows and emergency vehicles to get by, or you'll be there for a long time. Be aware of possible approaching weather systems and schedule regular rest breaks to stay alert and avoid fatigue. We used to, out here on the West Coast is where I did most of my driving, and going over the Siskiyous, I would plan it so that I would go over the passes. If I couldn't make it in the middle of the day, which rarely happened, I would try to hit it late at night after 10 p.m. when everything was frozen hard, and it was a whole lot safer and had good traction. Other areas like the Grapevine in Southern California, when it snows, they're going to close the road. You're not going to have a decision to make. Going over Donner Pass, if it snows, you're going to chain up, or you're going to spend all winter in Reno. Knowing the roads and where you're going and the different types of snow that happen is really important as far as planning your trip. Next slide. Become familiar with an alternate route and have a backup plan. In extreme weather, it's important to discuss this with your dispatcher. Make sure, though, that your alternate route isn't taking side roads in a snowstorm. You want to be somewhere where the snow plows are. If something bad happens, you can get help, and you're not going to be stuck out there in the middle of nowhere. If you're on a side road and you get stuck or run off in the ditch, the snow plows have priorities. They've got to clear the main highways. The tow trucks have the same priorities. They're going to clear the main highways before they get out to the side roads. So it's very dangerous to get out on side roads. Have ideas of places to park throughout your route in case of emergency. Hopefully they're in populated areas and towns. If you're going for a longer stretch where there's not an option to park, make sure you know what the road conditions are by talking to drivers that are going in the opposite direction. Don't rely on your GPS or Google Maps. They don't always account for size and weight and height. Communicate with your dispatchers and other parties as soon as it's safe to do so. Open communication will help you safely manage the problem. Very important that your dispatcher knows what your plans are. If you stop, they need to know where you're stopping, just so they know where to look for you if they lose communication with you. They got to be able to know where to send help. And then, of course, regularly check weather updates for the entire route. We've got a great option for that on the ICSA website where you can check the National Weather Service right through the website. Next slide. Another good video. So speed for conditions. Low visibility, poor road conditions. You need to look further ahead and be very smooth in what you do. No sudden maneuvers. The time to stop and stay off of the road is different for everybody, and we need to realize that as professional drivers. The time to stop and get off the road is the first time you ask yourself if you should be off the road. Don't second guess yourself. If you're thinking that you need to be off the road, find a safe place to get off the road, next truck stop, and park it until conditions change. Chaining, very important in wintertime. Chains add traction. Make sure that you have chains, all your chains are in good condition. It's better to have the chains and not need them than to not have them and need them. Practice putting them on before you need them in dry weather. It's always smarter in the long run to have them set up so that they're all together, all the links are good. They're hanging properly so you can take them off quickly and easily and apply them whenever you need them. And then add chains as they're needed, but before they're required. A lot of drivers will wait until chains are required before they put anything on. A lot of drivers you'll see out in the ditch with no chain. Putting one chain on a trailer and one chain on a drive axle makes a huge amount of difference in being able to keep your truck and trailer straight long before they require the chain. Next slide. And know about the chain laws in the states you're going to be driving in. ATBS has a comprehensive link that you can click on. The link is there on the screen. There's also some great options on the internet and YouTube as far as chaining videos. California is a great website. California Trucking Association has some great slides on what tires are required to have chains on and for chains required. And it's important to know some states have fines for not having chains, but they also won't let you proceed if you're not carrying chains.
I'm gonna catch a couple of videos on snowplows here real quick. If ever you can, I'd like you to look at the date that was recorded. That's August 22nd. So it goes to show you that the winter weather driving season may be a little longer in some parts of the country than others. Here in Wyoming, we talk about our winter weather driving and our agricultural season being the same distance. In this one, it's hard to even see the snowplow because of the fog. If the wind was out of a different direction, you wouldn't be able to see it. We're going to talk about snowplows here in a second. So snowplows, obviously, as that video just showed, with the snow fog coming off of that plow, it's important to keep a significant and safe distance. Unless you have that wonderful visibility, we should avoid passing snowplows. What we're seeing here in the West, I know Colorado is doing it, Wyoming in a few places, is what's depicted in that still shot up above there. You got a group of snowplows that are going from pavement edge to pavement edge, and they're holding traffic behind them at a specific speed. You know, if you're in one of those, passing the snowplows is probably going to be frowned on. First of all, there's no safe place to do it because they've got the entire road blocked. So mostly be aware that usually in the western states we get wind, and the limited visibility around a snowplow because of blowing snow is going to be enhanced. But then there's the snow, ice, and debris that comes off of those snowplows as they're moving. That can also get on your windshield, mess up your wipers under your tires, cause traction issues, and in general cause havoc. So just be aware of the snow plows. Every state, they look a little different, but they're all doing the same job, and they're actually out there to help. I know sometimes it doesn't feel that way because they're driving 40 and everyone else wants to drive 70, but they're getting it cleared off, and they're trying to make the road better.
Hey, Scott,
Yeah.
that's a really great point you made about them doing 40 and everybody wanting to do 70. Just from a former driver standpoint, whenever we get held up behind a snowplow, it's so easy to think that, gosh, he's going so slow, I can go much faster than this. Well, of course you can. That's because the road's plowed and he's got sand on it.
Yeah.
The bad road's in front of the snowplow, so that's where you don't want to be.
That is correct.
Better to stay behind it and be safe.
Next slide. So, avoid driving at dusk and dawn. We talk about that, you know, when in dry weather because of lighting issues. In inclement weather, it's more relevant to the fact that that's when the road is transitioning from damp to frozen, and it's deteriorating it, and couple that with the inability to see well, and it's hard to see those bad spots. Distribute weight evenly over all your axles. That doesn't mean completely evenly. We want to keep a little more weight on the drives on the truck to keep the traction rolling. Don't load everything towards the back of the trailer. That's a recipe for disaster. And don't load everything at the front because you need a little weight on them trailer axles to keep it behind you. Bobtailing, pulling an empty trailer on slick roads, just common sense there. There's no weight on the tractor for traction without that trailer and a load on it. So you're setting yourself up for failure. Engine brakes and cruise control on slick roads are another recipe for disaster. Retarding that engine will or could cause the drive axles to lock up and loss of control. Cruise control, just the opposite. They're not going to lock up. They're going to spin, trying to maintain the speed and it's not a good idea. Bridges, they freeze first. They always do. We here in Wyoming, we talk about that a lot in training. The bridge decks, they get air under them and it allows the cooler air to be up underneath that pavement of the bridge deck, and it just gets cold there quicker than it does. The ground holds a little warmth into the road otherwise. They're going to freeze first and become slicker quicker.
They also thaw last. So when the road starts thawing, you'll be running with wet tires and hit a bridge that's frozen, and wet tires and frozen bridge, your dry tires will roll backwards, and it's impossible to control that truck.
Next slide. So, along with ourselves, we got to take better care of our truck a little bit in the winter. Just not maybe better care, but there's a few more things we want to pay close attention to. Tire pressure drops. I know even on your personal vehicles, you get into cold weather and you'll get in and all those sensors are going off. Well, commercial vehicles, same thing. That cold air, the tire pressure comes out of them. So make sure you check those during pre-trip. Thicker engine oil is harder to start. You're going to spend more idle time to keep that oil soft. More warm up time once you do shut it off. Just be aware of that. Make sure you're getting everything in proper order. Belts will become more brittle, as will other items that are, you know, plastic and whatever. They become brittle. Coolant. Check your antifreeze and make sure you're good to the proper temperatures. I would recommend a minimum of 20 below, because it's not uncommon overnights up here in the high country to get down real close to that. So I would recommend having it down that low. Winter specific wiper blades. There is a difference. Yeah, there's a cost difference too, but that one video we saw earlier, you could see some ice crusting up on that windshield when that guy was coming up behind a snowplow, I think he was, and made it hard to see the plow. So visibility is paramount. Batteries, cold weather, just like hot weather will eat batteries up. So keep those batteries warm, keep them in good condition. Also, you won't have quite the cranking power when your battery's cold as it does when it's a little warmer. Additive to prevent diesel. In most places in the higher countries in the wintertime, when you get diesel, you're buying a blended fuel, so you have some added protection there. But I still recommend using the fuel additives, keeping that down. Excuse me, to where you won't have any gelling issues, as well as having at least some additive, some of the emergency additive in the truck, just in case you do have a gelling problem, and you can solve that and get yourself moving down the road again.
Hey, Scott, we used to always use the 10 and 2 rule also. If the weather's going to be below 10 degrees and you're going to stop for more than 2 hours, leave the truck idling, don't shut it off.
Good advice. Slide. There we go. Gear for yourself, and the truck. So we talked about chains. Have good chains. Know how to put them on. Practice in decent weather on level ground in the daylight, because the chances are it's not going to be level. The weather's going to be bad, and it could be dark where you're at when it's time to put them on. So everything will be working against you. Murphy's going to be there helping you with that. A shovel, you know, any kind of good metal shovel. They make the collapsible ones, so they don't take up a lot of space. Just something that you can shovel some snow or ice out, but I say metal because you may have to chip a little with it too, and those plastic ones aren't going to hold up for that. Traction compound, you know, whatever works good for you. Cat litter, floor dry, sand. There's a wide variety of them. I would not recommend the ice melt. You're not going to hopefully be sitting there that long for that to be productive. But keep something in the truck, you know, 20 pounds or whatever it takes. Maybe just a one-time thing, but it would sure get there. A good scraper, with an extended handle, because it's hard to reach those higher windows, especially across the windshield without that. And also on the other end of those, a lot of times you'll find a brush to help brush some snow off of some areas. The tarp comes in handy when you're doing that chaining. Who wants to lay on a snowy, icy road and put chains on a truck? I don't. And so if you have that, you can put it down and get yourself a drier place to take care of those things. And for yourself, good clothing. Boots, heavy insulated, preferably with good tread. They make some ice tread boots now. They're not cheap, but all this will pay off in the end. It may be an expense up front, but a good pair of boots will last you. You're probably, if that's what you wear them for, is just bad weather, most of them will last your entire career. A jacket, waterproof is not a bad idea, but just make sure it's warm and it fits good. Might even be a size bigger than you would normally wear, so you can have some layers underneath it. Extra gloves, thick warm socks, a beanie or stocking hat to keep your ears and top of your head cold. I know a lot of us out there don't have as much natural insulation on top of our head as we used to, so these types of hats are relevant. And extra layers, I talked about those a second ago. Layering up is always good, and then if you're outside the truck and you're getting warm, you can take a couple of those layers off so you don't oversweat.
There's a ton of advice, winter safety advice on some of the trucker channels online, YouTube videos. We could get really in depth on this about carrying baggies to put your socks, your feet in before you put your shoes on, keep your feet dry. We could talk about this all day, but there's a whole lot more involved in this. That, you know, the more experience you get, the more advice you can pass on to others. But feel free to search more on the internet.
Emergency kits. You know, this slide, if you can say that or just take a picture of it, it's a really good one.
It will be available on the website too, Scott, so that
If
they need to go back and check it out later, they can do it.
Your medication, I mean, y'all are used to traveling, so you probably have that with you regardless, but just make sure you have extra days of that. It's not uncommon, you know, sometimes here in Wyoming, 80 will close for 4, 5, 6 days before they get it opened up. And that's going to be a little more time than most of you are planning on being out. Eye contact, extra contacts and eyeglasses, clothing, non-perishable foods. I recommend anyone traveling commercially or not in this country have enough food for 2 to 3 days. Don't be afraid to throw in some MREs. They're not the tastiest food, but they're sustenance. A good first aid kit, paper maps, because Google cell phone may go down and you'll need to be able to figure out where to go and where you're at. Cash and a good credit card, obvious reasons there. At least a gallon of drinking water, some hand and feet warmers, those little packets they make to help keep you warm if you have to be outside doing stuff. Your safety vest and gloves, ice cleats for your boots. Put them on and they really help. More traction than just a pair of rubber sole boots. Your phone chargers, and I wouldn't dissuade folks from getting those. They make battery packs where if you don't have the ability to plug your phone in, the battery in that will just charge your phone. A good flashlight, maybe a rechargeable. You know, you can keep that in the truck and keep it charged up. Necessities like toilet paper, paper towels, jumper cables, or a good jump box. Some sort of warning device, air horn whistles, solar powered radios, you know, just basic good stuff here. Warning triangles, fire extinguishers, a bag and blankets, something you can get in and stay warm. And then there again is the ice scraper. So sometimes if the weather gets bad enough, emergency personnel will not be able to get to you that day, or they're just responding to that many calls. So y'all need to be prepared to spend at least an overnight in your vehicle out in the world away from services. So we talked about the boots with the traction devices, the ice cleats. Those are available in a lot of places. There's not really size specific, kind of small, medium, large. They clamp on or hook on to your normal boots. So when it's more icy, you can wear those. You know, take short steps. Don't try to run. Take your time. Use your arms for balance. Lean on the truck if you have to. The 3-point of contact rule is paramount, especially in this adverse weather. Mike spoke earlier about doing your good pre-trips. While it's not a regulated portion of a pre-trip, it's a really good idea when you're doing that pre-trip to grab all the pull bars and handbars on your truck and just make sure they're solid, so you know they're there. Easier to fix them while you're in the yard if something's loose or cracked, or if you got a fairing bent back against it where you can't get your hand on it very easily. During the pre-trip's a good time to look at that stuff and make sure it's ready to be out on these bad roads. And we talked about a lot of things here that may add up in the price column, and I know everyone out there is not swimming in money. There is an expense here, but being prepared it could be a lifesaver. So you need to weigh that in there. And 95% of the stuff we've spoke about that you would want to have and truly need in a kit in your truck is non-perishable. So once you purchase it, you have it. I mean, if it breaks or you wear it out, maybe, but almost all of it will last a very long time, and it's not stuff you're going to have to buy every 4 to 6 months or whatever and replace. You know, moving on there, it takes training for winter weather, emergency kits together. There's time involved there. Most of you are going to spend your own time on that, but it's just so important for self-preservation when you're out there. to make sure that you have the stuff, the necessary stuff to get by and get through the storm or the incident.
Hey, Scott,
Yes, sir.
can I add too, as a professional driver, the way that you learn to drive in snow and ice is by experience, but you got to have progressive goals for yourself. Your first year driving, you may only be able to drive in 1 inch of snow. Set that as your goal, to learn how to drive in 1 inch of snow. And you do that by, when you encounter 1 inch of snow, you talk to an experienced driver or another company driver that's with your company, and you follow them over the hill and get tips from them on the radio as you're going over. They'll help you chain up if you need to. And then the next year, set your goal for two inches of snow. And you stop at about 4 years, by the way. Those of us with 25 years experience, we don't drive in 25 inches of snow. But you have to set a progressive goal. You don't just jump out there and drive in 4 inches of snow in your first year.
That's a good point. And it's also relevant as to what your already skills you may have in these weathers. We talked about this the other day when we were working on preparation. If you were born and raised in southern Florida and now you're driving a truck across I-80 in Wyoming or across 70 in Colorado, you may not have had that growing up knowledge of that type of driving, and whereas people who grew up there would have a little more comfort in those areas. So it's important you don't overdrive your own skills regardless of the weather.
Good point. Just because you made it through one winter without getting in a wreck doesn't mean you don't have to drive in snow.
Yep, it can happen to anybody anytime. And back on the stuff to have with you, it's better to have what you need and know what you're doing with it than to be stranded out there without it. One time of being in a storm without what you need, and I think everyone that's had to do that will say the cost is irrelevant. Get what you need, get it in there, and know you have it with you. And to Mike's point about learning as you go, stay off the road if it's too dangerous. If you are not comfortable, if it's just too slick, too bad, you can't see, find a safe place and park that thing. The regulations even talk about that in 392.14, that if it's sufficiently dangerous, the operation of the commercial motor vehicle shall be discontinued. I know several states that don't really have a state statute that talks about, they have driving too fast, but they don't have inadvertent weather statutes. And their opinion on this is, unfortunately or fortunately, that if you fall off the highway, so to speak, then you were in violation of 392.14 because you were driving too fast, the roads were too bad. But stop. Besides the regulation, if you're uncomfortable, if it's not safe, find a safe place and stop. Nothing that's behind that tractor is worth anyone's life, especially yours, or even just having the wreck itself. So just remember that point there. If it gets too dangerous, find a safe place and stop. I can't stress that enough.
And don't let anybody tell you that, well, all the other trucks are going over the hill. Why can't you? You're not all the other trucks. You have to decide what your skill level is and set a progressive goal.
As well as the ability of your vehicle. Not every truck's built the same either. So
great point.
So yeah, just if it's not there, and don't let someone sway you, like Mike said. It's your decision. You should be able to stand by it.
Well, I really appreciate both of you. We're going to open it up for questions from the crowd. I know I've learned a lot, but I actually have a couple of questions. Number one, Scott, I'm really grateful that you brought up slip and falls. I know that we usually think about driving in inclement weather. We don't think about walking in inclement weather, but that's one of the most dangerous things. As you climb out of the truck, that 3 points of contact,
you have no idea what your footing is going to be like on the steps down. You've got no idea what that's all the ice and snow that's splashed up that's going to make that slick, and then the conditions to walk in. That's a great point to avoid some pretty serious injuries that we've seen over the years in trucking, people walking along that. Mike, I had a question for you though. You talked about avoiding fatigue. I'm going to guess that this type of driving in these inclement conditions is a little more stressful. You're having to use so much more of your mental capacity. Does that make it more important that you avoid fatigue, that you take that break to stay alert?
That is a great question, and you're absolutely right. You need to be at 100%. Just like your pre-trip, you make sure your equipment's at 100%. Your brain and your body needs to be at 100% too. So, in extreme weather, any kind of extreme weather, you want to be sitting up in the seat, sitting up on the wheel, and absolutely focused on the job at hand. No sitting back driving with one hand.
Yeah, and you bring a good point of not just your mind, but your body too, because some of those videos we watched, I found myself clenching up. Your body, your mind, everything's going to get more tired. Even more important to avoid fatigue. But then we also talked about like the sources of information, Google Maps or GPS. What are some of the other sources that we can look to figure out about roads, so that we're not relying on Google Maps that's going to take us down a sketchy road that might not be drivable?
Well, we got the U.S. Weather Service. What do you got, Scott? I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's fine. Another good question. Most of the western states that I'm aware of, again, that's where most of my world's been, but have a state-wide transportation map, whatever that be. In Wyoming, it's called wyo.roads or wyoroads.gov, sorry. And on there's a map that shows the conditions statewide of the roads. I know Colorado, Kansas, New Mexico, Montana all have those. I'm not sure about the rest. But those websites where you can pull up a picture of the road or actual webcam pictures of what things look like, where you're headed, give you an idea of what you're driving into and what the road conditions are. And if a road's not listed on the state map of road conditions, I would strongly suggest it is not a route you want to be on in that kind of weather.
511 used to be a really good source that I used too, that would link you up with the road service. It asks you to enter the state or the road highway that you're on, and it'll give you all the road conditions for that highway.
Important to be in the know and to use the most accurate source of information. Do we have any questions from any of the folks that are attending? If not, we want to thank everybody for attending, but most of all, thank you, Scott and Mike, for being with us, sharing your expertise, sharing your know-how. I had the privilege of working in the office next to Mike and learning from him, but every time I hear him talk about this, I learn more. Scott, I've got all the respect in the world for as well. I learned something from both of these gentlemen every time I hear them talk, and we really appreciate their time and sharing their experience with us in dealing with these conditions that we all have to deal with. But the important thing is that we do it safely and make sure that we make it to our destination in one piece, and everybody else does too. So thank you. We'll have this webinar posted on our website. If you do have any other questions, the contact information is on the page, and feel free to visit our website at safecarriers.org to learn more about dealing with inclement weather. Thank you, folks.